1. And there it is. We are live. It always asks with the blue button and asks me if I know this meeting is being live streamed and asks me if I want to stay. I hosted the meeting. I hope I would know. Anyway, this is Mitch Cabbage coaching today, the Savage in Business. This is the MCC virtual business box lunch, and that's lots of noise coming from the other glowing box. There we go. That one's done there. And as always, the virtual business box lunch comes to tell you about the week that was in business. We talk about the stuff that is relevant to you. It is important from a local, regional, national, and international standpoint. And like always, I come up with the ideas. I tell nobody about it ahead of time, and then I sandbag them with them for your entertainment. But to do this, it needs a good panel of people. And right now, some of the good panel of people are off camera. And since we're live, you will need to come on shortly, Yulia and Justin. But we're going to get them to introduce themselves here very, very shortly. But we can't do it without these people. They're part of my tribe. They're part of the syndicate family, and they are experts in business as well. So we're going to get them involved in this conversation too, because of course, many hands make light work, and the smarter the group of people you put together in a room, the more likely you are to get it right. With that, as always, and the other one, normally I say I can't do this without my brothers from other mothers, but today, right now, it's only my brother from another mother, and that's Matt Houston riding shotgun on the left of my screen at the moment, and we'll let him chat a moment and start to get everybody else to introduce themselves while I do the button pushing and other crap that needs to happen in the back end. Matt, floor is
Absolutely.
yours.
Thanks, Mitch. Happy Friday, all. So I've seen many of you multiple times this week, and I love that the power is within the proximity, and you guys will be hearing more about that, whether or not it's today or in some of our other upcoming events. So again, the week that was, I think that we are definitely into spring. It's interesting still 45 years into this version of my life that 1 hour time difference really does mess some people up. And I've been dealing it with my family, personally, professionally, and so many of the clients. And I hope that that's one of the talking points, is that if we're going to move away or move to permanent daylight savings, because I just love when you don't have a right answer, but we can chat about it all the time. And what is it? Class warfare? Am I going to say that to you today? Dawn, you're in there, right? Anyway,
that's the secret word.
Yeah, there we go. Nice. We do have to make sure that we have secret words. See, and Mitch, I actually helped with that as well, because I'm going to bring these. I'm more of a close quarter type guy. So Lorette, I'm still waiting.
I'm going to bring out my shield, like my shield made in Viking shield.
And the
there we
sword.
go. Anyway, so I'm Matt Houston. I look forward to the chat. Why don't we go with Lorette, because we've heard her voice already today.
Well, I'm going to punch Matt in the face one day, so that's exciting. My name is Lorette Lee from Phoenix Career Development. We do development strategies to help people just live and have a career that they love. So I love my job. I love what I do.
Justin, you're snacking, so we'll go with Dawn next.
Don Verboom, 4Tree Coaching for businesses, small, mid-sized businesses, usually in manufacturing, distribution, or service industries. I really help them figure out how to make that business successful, or put some time in their life, or get the right people in the company. Let's get those things going. Glad to help out anyone who wants some help.
Awesome. Thanks, Dawn. Yulia, you're on camera. Who are you today?
Well, I am, as usually, Epic Experiences. Nothing changed there. We e-commerce platform specializing in experience gifts and adventure tours all across Canada, and we're trying to bring more excitement into your life. So,
Awesome. Thanking you. And Justin.
Justin Thibault. I'm with Roman Debt Solutions. We do all things debt, anything from corporate restructures to civil litigation, arranged financing, anything to do with a consumer or business going through debt.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Mitch, you need a couple more minutes, yeah?
Give me just another 30 seconds here.
All these buttons, hey? All of these buttons.
All these.
I will say part of that can be maybe one of the first questions that I pose. What software, what program, what tool are you using right now that when it works, it's just nothing but money, but when it doesn't, it's just like, pen and paper, you know, as long as you always have ink in your pen and you have a sheet of paper, it typically always works. But I'd like to know what kind of software or what kind of tool you're using that helps automate your business. Lorette, how about you?
Ooh, good question.
Okay, so number one, I was around in the 80s and 90s when the internet broke all of the time. So I love how people are like really invested in the internet and how it's like everything to fix my problems. It's going to break, period. So like what is my favorite tool to use that streamlines my services? Zoom. We're on it right now. I was deciding if I should do Skype at the beginning or Zoom. Zoom made it, but I just had a call before this call. My client lives out in the country. It always takes a while to connect. So I'm just like, are you coming? Like, okay, you're on, and there's the three dots. It drives me bonkers. It might only be like 30 seconds, but that's the longest 30 seconds of my life where I'm just like, hurry up, Zoom, jump my client. So that's my answer to your question.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, like, isn't it so funny, the instant gratification that we've all kind of created for
Right?
ourselves? If you don't connect immediately, you're pissed off. Don, how about you? You got to use a ton of software.
Yeah, many different ones, and for the most part, I can't complain about them. I use a CRM tool, Nimble Software. I use QuickBooks, lots of Microsoft 365 and Zoom, and for the most part, it was good. But when you go back to the internet, that was sort of the core problem when all those things are relying on speed. And when I wasn't getting enough speed in my house, and I had the provider in a number of times, and they give you a bunch of excuses about the wires stretch as far as it can go, and we need different jacks. And finally had them fix it all up and do the right work to give me the right internet speed. So when I checked it, it was now running at say 95 MIPS and instead of 25. Then your whole life just got better. So just get the right internet because everything is so core related to cloud. So you have to have good internet and make sure you just keep hounding them till you get the one you deserve.
Absolutely. And again, like, I'm smirking because I think all of us on this call today are old enough to remember that fax type sound. Navigator. No, don't pick up the phone. I'm downloading a song. And like, my kids will never know that, right?
Yeah.
So interesting that you bring that up, but thank you, Don. Justin, how about you? What tools are you using?
Still rocking Napster.
Yeah.
Honestly,
John Parker's got to get paid. That's all that matters, right? Yeah.
Honestly, things like Box, Dropbox, OneDrive have been a lifesaver because you can go from, one system at your house to a different system at an office, to a different system, at another office, and not miss a beat on any of your paperwork, on any of your documents. Right now I'm in the basement on this call, but this morning I was on my laptop at the office and not missing a beat. So those are the tools that I'm using right now.
Excellent. Thank you. Yulia, how about you?
I think some people already named the tools. It's pretty much the same, like HubSpot, Dropbox, I like that. Another one for me is just Gmail, anything related like Gmail, Google. So that's really does my day, but also internet, obviously. And as long as my laptop works, so that's the biggest thing. So, and your phone, right? So those three things: laptop, internet, and phone. If you have those in place, I'm set. I'm good to go. So
excellent. Now I'll pose a question to you, because to me, I was actually thinking more about the fact that I've used the same really old office chair that I sit in now way too much. And I'm like, man, like, am I really that guy that's like, oh, I got to go buy a gaming chair or something, or ring lights, right? Like, all of these things now are a little bit more higher priority than they once were. And we chatted about early on 2 years ago now, the value proposition of the corner office or all of these other things that people strived for in the past. To me, I very quickly said the value proposition is going to be a green screen and great internet, like Don had just mentioned. Like, if a hybrid model is where we're going to move to, corporations based off of culture and staff retention may want to look at putting their own bulk buy procurement model together with the internet providers, right? Like, you would almost think, and I may be letting a cat out of the bag because I've been looking at this personally for another revenue stream, is that becoming a procurement officer for internet providers. Hey, you live in this area? Well, tell us isn't there yet, or their fiber isn't there, or Shaw and Rogers, what's going on in the CRTC right now. I wonder how that's going to play out, right? So again, it's interesting that we went to the true software technology piece, and I'm looking around in my, again, basement office. I've got a really big printer, but like, I don't know how many times I've had to restructure where the ring light goes, just depending on how white my beard gets, right? Throws off the white balance. So I think some of you could appreciate that too. Anyway, I'll go quiet. Mitch, it's your show.
I got Doug just chirping in here really quick. And first of all, he asked, so I think this is directed to you, Justin, what about LimeWire? And my response was, download diseases. That's all I had to say to him on that one with LimeWire, right? But he added his 2 cents worth too. Dropbox, FTP for work network storage, right? Graphics programs using CorelDRAW and other stuff like that. Of course, he's in shiny stuff too. So Doug, thanks for chipping in there with the notes on this one as well. But that is a great place to start, because the technology bridge actually goes into, and Matt, you didn't let the cat out of the bag, but you certainly talked about it. We're talking about a seasonal change and a seasonal shift. And we are seeing people going back to work. Now, we've talked about whether or not it needs to be returned to work or hybrid work or whatever it is, but we are seeing changes in efficiency. So the technology changed whether or not people need to be in the workplace, how consistently they need to be there. I just spoke to a client here this morning that the kind of role that he has, he's a project manager and engineer. He has a number of different places and positions that he has to fulfill. And yet at the same time, he's not needed. He works from home about half his time. He has to go in for team meetings. They like having team meeting face-to-face, but otherwise he has to go away. So in your mind, with the advent of technology, with what's going on in the marketplace right now, and with some of the pickup and boom, if you're in Canada, and particularly if you're in Alberta or in Ontario, you're going to see, or you've already been experiencing, a construction boom. And in fact, that construction boom is going to last for the next 2 to 4 years. In certain areas of the US, you're seeing an influx in industrial manufacturing. They are starting to bring more industrial manufacturing in-house on continent, as opposed to sourcing overseas. We've seen so many supply issues right now. So here's the question for the panel today. What jobs should still stay home? What jobs are going to be needed for hybrid? And what jobs are absolute musts face-to-face? We're all being struck with this dilemma, but most people here are self-employed. We're all working from our own place, deciding whether or not our office chair has survived long enough for us, or if we need to upgrade it. By the way, I made sure to buy the closest Captain Kirk looking office chair I could for my office 2 years ago. And unfortunately, I'm breaking its back now because I spend so much time in it. So I got to look for the version 2 kind of thing. But what roles are we seeing right now? What are we hearing from people? And what is the, hey, leave everybody at home, bring everybody back, or what stuff becomes musts in either category? I want to get an opinion from everybody. What are we seeing? What should be there, and what should be people going back? Thoughts?
I did a mediation on Tuesday, and it's the general consensus is they're welcoming the mediators back into the Brownlee building. But the courts don't want people physically going into the Brownlee building, so they're going to continue to do the mediation and stuff on Zoom. And it struck a little bit of a conversation similar to what your question is what needs to be in an office? How much more efficient is us being able to, attend mediation on Zoom rather than driving from, Leduc downtown Edmonton, and then, having to come in from Westlock or whatever, right? So I think office related things, yeah, you could still keep working from home. The service-based industry, can I serve alcohol from home? Well, I can to myself, but I'm not making money off of that, right? Whereas, those going in the restaurants, yeah, they're going to have to continue to do it. But I think anything office related, you should be able to have a hybrid and work from home full time or have that hybrid, 70-30 or whatever that split would look like. That's my personal opinion.
Okay. Rest of the panel, thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's obviously, again, depending on industry, but in one of our syndicate meetings, I can't remember if it was Mastermind or not, like I had read an article earlier in the week that some poll came out, I think it was Canada Post, and 82% of the pollees said, I would like a hybrid model. I'd like the option. Now, that obviously they're not polling healthcare, they're not, trades, because those haven't adjusted, right? Like if you want a floor put in, guess what? The flooring person is showing up. They're not doing that virtually. So it just now depends on where the value proposition is. And I'm curious to see how many corporations nationally, internationally really do say, you know what, I'm listening to our people. We want to make sure that we, again, have these value propositions or value centers that could be, again, like I'm not fearful of the commercial real estate because, again, we just built 3 really big glass towers. But like City of Edmonton condensed all of their employees into one tower, and that tower has sat empty for 2 years. And I have a friend that works within the city, and it's a 20% in office mandate. So that's 1 day. Well, so really they need 1/5 of the overall real estate that they're paying for. And I guess technically what we're paying for, right? So now it's just going to be about how you mitigate those challenges. Because if you're in a 20-year lease, you're not getting out of that easily, right? So anyway, I'm curious to see. I don't know if that's really the answer that you were looking for, but I think that in the next 12 months, we'll really identify those successful corporations based off of their culture fit.
Well, actually, Matt, you're going to what is not part 2, but certainly part B of this. And I mean, Doug's already arrived there in the chat, in the comment too. So Doug, I don't know why you're not just joining on camera, but you could certainly join in on camera if you want to, brother. Feel free to pop in. But the real intention of my question isn't whether or not we can identify. So we've got career counseling and business coaching and finance and experiences, and we've got virtual assistants all showing up here on site. So I think we can get a pretty good cross section. But it's actually that next part of that intention. What Doug has said, and now what you're saying, Matt, is whose role is actually necessary face to face and who isn't. So why is this important to business owners? Why should this be important to the week that was in business, or what a small or medium business owner should think of right now? If you're hiring brand new, in the last 2 years, people's thinking has started to shift whether or not they had regular gainful employment or not on what constitutes gainful employment. If you had workers that were away, you have to start to judge how efficient they were at their job. The number of instances I've seen anecdotally, not just humorously in the form of memes, but anecdotally and empirically, where people are going, I'm being asked to go back to the office, but I'm being told I'm doing the best job I've ever done. Why am I being punished? Why do I have to go back to work instead, right? So if your job isn't a necessary requirement, we watched a shift in restaurants. So let me rephrase that. What is absolutely mandatory or important? And if it isn't important or mandatory, what do managers, leaders, or business owners have to consider when it comes to return to work, hybrid, or leave people alone and let them do their job? Because Matt, you opened up the gateway actually by asking about technology. It's interesting what technology can and cannot help us accomplish just from something as simple as spotty or good internet. So let's reframe that statement now and say, for a business owner or a leader coming in, what should be their consideration or their criteria for whether or not people should work from home? Whether it should be hybrid or whether we're going to need the bin.
The reason why this is such a complex question is because we as people are complex. We have like a spiritual side to us, a physical side to us, and to a mental side to us. So then you have like 3 different categories to group the importance of. And like, it really is convinced, like, is it convenient to the employer or is it convenient to the employee, right? Like everything that I can do online. I never have to meet people face to face because I'm a service industry, right? But like physically, if you create something like a building, you have to be at that building location, right? So for me, I think it's location, location, location. It's easy to go to my room and just start working because it's really easy. Like, oh, that's super easy. But like some people, physical, obviously you have to physically be there. But like, I'm just going to add another element of like, okay, physical, mental, spiritual. There's lots of things going into the workplace and the calculated thought about, is it a good idea? Isn't a good idea? So I just made it more confusing.
Oh, fair enough. Don?
Yeah, I'm going through kind of a shift on that process. Basically the last couple of years as I got into coaching was all Zoom related, all impersonal. Like Lorette says, it's all that kind of technology. But now I have the ability to go out and meet, some clients or in situations, and just evaluating that yesterday. I was thinking like, this is good. I got to go out and see the client's new building, and we talked about how they're designing it, and it just helped bring us a lot closer. I thought, Zoom is good, but there was some good stuff about connecting with people. And so back to your question, I think a lot depends on how much collaborative advantage there is to working together. You know, I was in the office industry for 10 years, and a lot of planning and thinking went on to about how you brought people together. How do you need the group think to kind of, pass ideas and brainstorm, whatever. And it's not the same as being on a Zoom and doing a brainstorming session. You're not seeing the interaction. And then, Zoom, quite often you might see people heads down, they're doing their email or checking something out. They're not totally focused. So when I need the best brains thinking about the best ideas, I think I have to bring them together. And so I think we're going through these phases of learning what the hybrid model looks like and different options for it for different business. And they have to trial and error that because it's new territory. So it's probably some combination, unless you're strictly like I have a sister that does receivable collection for a big company. She can just do that from her home for the rest of her life. There's no need to collaborate. They just meet once a week on Zoom and talk about what they're collecting. They don't need to meet. But if I'm building engineering something or creating a new idea, or I'm in advertising or marketing and I need more input about how to create creative ideas, I think I need those people face to face around a table and throwing ideas back and forth and so forth. There's good advantage in it. And I think we've gone maybe too far thinking Zoom was perfect. Let's just keep doing it. And we got to go back and say, well, not for everyone. And, but I do need, and I see that, I think where Matt, we were talking about it on Wednesday, is that there are just some business owners that just say, I want to see those people in the seats. And it's not because of a real practical thing. They're not talking collaboration. They just want to physically keep their finger on them and make sure they're working. I just need to see them typing, then I know. Because when they're at home, does the kids bug them or the cat? They got to walk the dog. Are they getting enough done? And maybe it's hard to measure their output, but some owners are just saying, I need to physically see that. And I think that's maybe the wrong way to go, is that you really have to figure out what is the real benefit of being back in work. Can you measure it? Can you do things? And are you flexible enough to try a few different things? If the first version is maybe not the right answer.
I have a friend. I've got a friend who was hired during the pandemic with the premise of working from home, and now the company is saying that they want him to come back into the office. But since he's been hired, he's the top of the leaderboard, killing the quotas that are put in front of him over and over and over again. And for him, he forces himself to get up to go walk the dog. Whereas when he's at the office, he's sitting at a computer, burning himself out because he's not getting up to go for those walks. It's not being forced on him. Where having some of those little distractions, I think, take you away from your mandatory, I've got to be here for 8 hours. And if I'm not working, if I'm slacking, if I'm having a conversation with somebody, I'm going to get reprimanded for it. I think that that's not the way that we have to be going with it anymore. You're hired to do a job. There's a certain level of trust. If you're shitting the bed, then okay, that's a different conversation. But I mean, if your productivity's gone up or your productivity's maintained the same, I don't see why employers should be forcing employees back into the office.
Anybody else?
Well, I just want to chime back in and I agree with everything that's been said. Like, I firmly believe that the hourly employee is going to go away. You're going to be fully metrics driven. There's going to be a certain indicator, a benchmark that you're going to need to achieve. And if it takes you 2 hours at home, great. If it takes you 3 hours in the office, great. But you're only getting paid if you do X. And to speak to Justin's statement about, productivity and efficiency at the workplace, just because you're there doesn't mean you're there, right? And people are always suggesting, well, no, like I'm working from home, but I'm going to go up and make myself lunch, or I'll do a load of laundry and I'll do all that. I have to tell you, if you're in the office, it's worse because you're thinking about those things and you're not doing them. So all of a sudden now, when you look at the 60 minutes of work, you may only be getting 30 to 35 minutes. Whereas at home, if I can get up, go for a run for 8 minutes and come back and I'm recharged, I'm getting 50, 52 minutes all the way, right? So, and again, obviously I lean to the hybrid model for sure, because I can be productive, but I also know, like Shannon and I were talking on the phone while I was going to an in-person meeting. Well, that in-person meeting was supposed to be 15 minutes, but like 75 minutes later, I'm walking out and I have 30 business cards. That would not have happened in a Zoom room, right? So there's definitely pros and cons to both. You need to find And from a business owner standpoint, you need to find who works best where, and you can still collaborate. Like we have, like, literally buy them all virtual reality headsets. They can all be sitting in the office, right? Like nothing that you see, Paul's is real and Yulia's is real. Everyone else's world right now is fake, right? So it just depends on what you consider collaborative. But anyway, that's my 10 cents, not just 2 cents.
Shannon?
Well, it's just interesting that you're talking about this today, because I've had a number of conversations being in the virtual space, and I've seen and heard stories from both sides of the coin. I think when it comes to roles like sales and that sort of thing, you do a much better job when you can do that face to face, because it's about the relationship built, right? And it's harder to know if that person in front of you is authentic if you're staring at them through a screen. Can you trust them? How much longer is it going to take you to get to know them through that screen? But the thing that I find very interesting is I've obviously done a ton of market research about virtual assistants and working virtually and that sort of thing before I decided to open this business. And all of the statistics that I found, part of the reason that I decided that this was a good idea was because a lot of the statistics are indicating that, and some of these come from Deloitte, like these are big names that have done this research, right? People are more satisfied with their jobs. They're happier in their roles, there's less turnover, and they're actually more productive and creating better quality work by being able to have the opportunity to work in a time and space that best suits them. And that is not necessarily being at the office, right? If employers are concerned about whether or not the work is getting done or whatever like that, well, are they meeting their deadlines? Is the work coming in? Are the meetings still happening? Like these are your benchmarks, not whether or not they're sitting in a desk and you can see them typing, right? However, corporate America is always the most stubborn and most difficult entity to convince that there could be a better way of doing things than their traditions, right? So I'm hearing a lot of employers going, oh, there's so many distractions at home and there's this going on and it is not optimal and we want them back in the office. No, what you're saying is you want to be able to control your employees, which means you're about to see your productivity going down. You're about to see the quality of work being produced, dissatisfaction in the role and higher rates of turnover, simply because you're insisting those people have to be in those desks so you can control their environment. And that's the bottom line. That's the absolute bottom line. And you either accept and acknowledge that or you don't. And it's either to your benefit or to your detriment, right? And we're hearing it now, corporate America dragging its heels. Like we can hear the heel marks being made as we speak, right? They don't want to make this shift. So I think it's to their best if they put themselves aside and look at each role, each department on an individual basis. And we need to adapt our workplaces. When those think tanks happen or those masterminds happen, if they're better in person, well, what kind of space are you giving to accommodate that? Just because they're in the office, is it really better? Is it really going to be a more productive session? Look at your environment. We're going to have to change what the workspace even looks like, right? It's going to be more community-based spaces, less cubicles. And you need to be able to make those changes. But not every role is going to do better by you forcing them back behind a desk.
I want to disagree with you. That's why I'm like jumping in. But like, it's the value of a person, right? So if you're face to face with me, you're way more valuable. Like, because it was COVID, it took me a while to like meet Paul. It took me a while to meet Matt. So like, once you meet someone face to face, you're important in my life and you exist. So if I hire someone, you're important enough to be in my energy. You're important enough to be in my corporation. My corporation is located here. You better be here because I care about you and I want to see you. So that's my counter conversation to that.
No, because if you care about me, then you care about providing the space and the working opportunity and the community.
But I want to know if you exist.
How I
connect. Want to poke you and touch you. Like, I think
Don't
with
touch
Paul, I was
me.
like,
Don't
"Who is
touch me. I don't
this?"
need you to touch me. I don't know
Agreed,
where you've
agreed.
been,
But
so I'm
just
good
saying,
with
there's
that.
a counter argument going on.
No. No, the thing is, though, is that if you actually care about your employees, coming from an HR standpoint, because that is my background, if I care about my employees, I care enough to take into consideration what works best for them and how they can best contribute to my company. And I care about them as an individual on that level as well.
When you and me have conversations about partnering together, Shannon, they're face to face because you're important to me. So I know when we have business meetings, because we're working so close together, they're going to be face to face. They're not Zoom meetings because I'm tired of Zoom.
Well, now we address
But
something
that's
important,
yeah.
Shan, if I can. And now that we address something important, there's a nature at which you deploy the technology, or the way you deploy something as well, because Zoom fatigue is very much a real thing. So let's use that as a frame to not shift the conversation away from here, but to drill it down a little more. This is really important because it touches on a number of features. We've heard sales already. We've heard marketing. Management certainly has an impact. The workspace itself, whether physical. So there are a couple of different studies that have come over the last little while. One is that to a greater extent, depending on the kind of role, performance is increased quite a bit, statistically quite a bit, depending on the kind of job. But there are a number of categories of jobs, major categories and roles, et cetera. We're talking a lot more white collar America, of course, because it's really hard to weld via Zoom. It really is. So you physically have to go somewhere to weld, or to use a drill, or to use a hammer, or to install a furnace, or to handle the electrical work, et cetera. You must still do that. Can't happen here. But we're watching modeling where statistical modeling says that people are home more frequently. They're actually more efficient because their workplace is disrupted. And that study goes into what the optimum work environment looks like. Work not constituting a period of time longer than 50 to 90 minutes, with a maximum of 5 to 10 minutes break. Like 5 to 8 minutes is about the number. So if you work 90 minutes and have 8 minutes worth of break, it's considered more optimal. You're going to accomplish more in that period of time, or it's a shorter period of time. So we're talking about chunking or breaks or blocks. But if corporate managers, leaders, or business owners don't understand that learning first how to time manage and teaching your employees how to do it would actually get more performance, then it's better to well, all of the points made here today, to have them back in the office so I can watch them while they type. Don, I believe that was the comment you made, right? As long as I can see you typing, I know you're working. Well, you're afraid to get up from your desk and walk away. Yet when you take that and you flip it the other way, other studies have been done on behavior profiling, and great examples are some of the largest technology companies we have in the world. Organizations like Google, for example, look at their hiring practice. One, they do prefer people to be back in the campus, and two, they've made the campus so inviting because they know they're going to get more work out of people because of it. If I make it so that you can get a shuttle to and from home that starts at 6 a.m. and will deliver you back home at 11 o'clock at night, the likelihood of you working longer is higher. If I make it so that you can show up to the office and you are going to have breakfast, lunch, and supper available on the company every day, but you got to stay till 5:15 for the meal, your likelihood is going to increase. If I've got an in-house gym, laundry facilities, dog walker, I allow a pet-based environment. Why? 6 in 10 people in a certain age demographic at Google's headquarters have dogs. So they include pet walking, dog environment, et cetera. Why? It keeps you longer there if you have no pull to go home and take care of your dog. So we're seeing studies on both sides finding ways to either manipulate the system to allow people to stay home, or manipulate the people to keep them in the office longer and get more productivity out of them. But by more productivity, just more hours of work being valued. So if you don't understand what that's going to be, so taking that into light next to frame the conversation as we go forward, not what is the perfect answer, but what is your answer next? What should people be mindful of? What should they be looking at if they're looking to hire or they're looking to engage with their people? Do we create a campus, or do we send them all home?
I just want to highlight something. Like, as I'm listening to Mitch talk about these big tech companies, again, like the Apple campus, Google, and all that, they have slides, they have dog walkers, they have, vending machine, they have all of these things. But like, that sounds like a lot like working from home. So if I have a dog walker, I have a dog walker right now because I'm at home, right? So it's interesting that you're trying to merge this, because the community and, to me, I'm held more accountable in the real world, right? I think we all are. But I do find that I'm able to put in at least an additional hour, if not 2, into my workday, because I'm not driving to my next meeting. And based off of productivity, I can work out and literally be in a meeting within 5 minutes, and I don't have to worry about the whole shower, travel, and any of these things, right? So like you can now, if you are feeling that funk halfway through the day, go and do 10 burpees, go and lift some weights, and you can get back into the office and you don't have to worry about putting perfume on or not, right? So there's like all of these benefits that some people may see, but I do find, again, your statements about these big tech companies, they've been so successful by drawing people into their campus because they've made it like home. Like it's literally like a uni campus, right? Like if you can go and it's a frat house or it's a sorority, you're going to align there, right? And that's where that culture comes from. So I love that you made that statement.
And sorry, I'm just going to jump in because that's exactly the point I was trying to make. So there are, for getting the work done, we don't have to be in the office. I don't, as a data entry clerk, as a receptionist, whatever, I don't have to be in the office. If you want to have meetings in person and you've got the meeting space, fine. But for those roles and that time that we are going to spend in the office, we are going to need to reevaluate what that office looks like, how it accommodates our employees, how it keeps them engaged, how we show them that we care in a different way. I used to work with I used to subcontract another company quite a bit here in Edmonton. And when you walked into the space, the first thing that was there was these big comfy couches. There was a kitchen area with every kind of drink and coffee and that. There was a foosball table, air hockey. And before you even sat down for a meeting, you had to play a game of air hockey first, right? It was a completely different experience. And it was that experience was part of the reason why I chose to work and contract with that company. These are some of the things that we're going to need to start looking at accommodating and incorporating into our workspaces. People are not happy any longer being the worker bees. As employers, if we want to, we can't just sit back and complain about turnover rates and the millennial perspective or whatever like that. No. Stop complaining about it. Find out how you work with it. Accommodate your employees. Show them that you care.
Yeah. Panel thoughts?
This is career development 101. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's a choose your own adventure. It's a match. So what is the company's values? What are your values? Do they match? If they match yours, you will stay there forever. If the company has one value that infringes on your ideas, you're gone. You hate that job. So understand your values, understand the company's values, match.
Yeah, I think the challenge now is the established businesses. One part, they have leases, as you mentioned, Matt. I've got all these empty desks here, and I took a 10-year lease on this building, and there's no one in it. Damn it, they're going to come in and use that space because I'm paying for it. Why would I settle for having them all at home, if I can have them all right in front of me, because I'm paying the same thing anyway. The lights are on. So there's that challenge of doing the different businesses. But it's interesting, but I think it still goes back to then what businesses need to collaborate people together, and there's mind think together. Like Google needs their people to be around the room and kibitzing at the water cooler and talking over the air hockey game and how are you going to handle this? And software developers for animation games and so forth, they're always talking about, hey, let's do this, let's try that. They have to be able to quickly do and talk about these things with it. And there are some softwares to help people collaborate a little bit, put text in, and, that's great maybe if you're in different countries. But, the world is changing. And I think there also has to be something, we're saying the employee's driving this, but what about the employer who says, well, if I can get, if you want to work from home, well, then why do I need someone who lives in my city? Why don't I just hire that guy in Bangladesh who's got twice the credentials of you and speaks English well, and let him do it for half the price? It's like when you open up the market to say we can work anywhere, well, there's the other side of that too, that if you push too hard, that you could be replaced by somebody in another country that's, better suited and works for half price or much less.
Technology disruption is at the root of it, right? Exactly what you're saying, Dawn. How is technology impacting our lives? How is it changing our lives? How has the business model of top down moved into more of a flattening? And at the end of the day, it's all results. What am I getting out of this? And what works for my environment If you look at real estate, where do people want to live? They want to live where, their money goes further. They're paying less tax. They're getting what they want, but they also want to live near nature. They want the golf course. They want the walking trails. They want the rivers. They want the mountains. So it's now with what we can do, people are physically moving to those areas. And that's where I think, taking real estate and moving it into business, that's what the tech companies have kind of done. They've taken the Disneyland and put it within their company. Whereas now we have the ability to, hey, I can move locations. I can do this virtually. But that being said, I also have someone that I know really well who's an executive assistant. She couldn't wait to get back into the office. Why? Because I could run in and go, hey, what was that thing again? And get the answer immediately and move on. Whereas before, she was on the phone, she was sending emails, she was on a Zoom, she wasn't getting the answers that she needed right away. So I think it is a definite balance moving forward. And I think, being paid hourly, Matt, I believe you said that, is going to be gone. It's going to be performance. It's going to be value. I don't care if you get it done in 2 hours or 2 days.
Well, and to speak to that, like, how about the overachievers? Like, it's difficult to overachieve virtually, right? Like you just mentioned the EA. Well, there are people that want to be in the environment because they're busybodies and they are super efficient and they can do so much more. Well, when the extra tasks are over there still, it's difficult to do that, right? So I'm curious to see again how quickly we move to that KPI driven metric rather than having, okay, well, you get paid for 8 hours. Well, actually, I don't want to pay you for 8 hours. I want to pay you for the result. Do this, this, and this. And here's the bonus question over here. If you get that done, great. Now move on to this. And maybe that's where, Dawn, we have that collaborative meeting. There's a breakout room that's literally open all day, right? Or a Teams meeting that's open all day. And once you're done your task, you can go in there and start chatting about some top tier stuff, some higher level. And that creates some value. And you can, edify others and yourself, right? So that's interesting. But I want to, real quick, I think we're missing the mark on one of these things about being in the office. How come none of us in the last 24 to almost 25 months has talked about the office romance? Like what? Like, you can't have an office romance over Zoom.
Left field, man.
Which
Anyway.
isn't that a testimony to being digital? Isn't that a testimony? Because how many we don't have people, we're not paying people to gossip around the water cooler or have
Right.
Please,
trysts
you can have
behind
a
the
Zoom
scenes.
romance. It's still here. Please.
Anyway, that was
Yeah,
a side
but we're
note,
not
it does
paying them
speak to-
for it anymore.
Exactly.
It's on your own time.
It's not. It's on work time.
Yeah, that's what breakout rooms are for. Yeah.
Can I see you in a breakout room for a moment? Yeah. This won't take long. Yeah.
Well, that also brings up culture, right? For a company's culture, how do I, as an owner, bring cohesiveness and a culture if everybody is working virtually? Do I have to actually plan where we're all together? Is it more of an event based? How do I continue to provide that culture that I have or that I want to develop for my company? Happy, productive employee, is the type of scenario.
Mhm.
Or are we losing touch with that?
It's gonna be much harder. You have to make sure when you're hiring, you're really hiring for your culture. You got to almost find it first and see if they're a fit. Like Lorette says, there's these values and things you have to connect with and agree with. And so you have to be better at hiring to make sure you get that, because they're not going to absorb it like maybe they used to, hanging around with everybody. And they say, oh, this is a real, work hard culture. Well, they don't see it. They're not around everybody with their heads down at 6 o'clock. They're saying, oh, everybody just went home, or I don't know, it's on Zoom. So you're going to have to make up for that. And events are one of the ways you can do it. You have to schedule it. It's just like, meeting in our network group. We need to get together once in a while if we can, just face to face. We went to a bar, we had a beer, I got to meet Lorette and Shannon, and, it was like great. So now we're connected a little bit.
Dawn doesn't look like Dawn in real life, by the way.
Yeah,
I was like,
and-
who are you?
And you didn't touch me, so I'm feeling bad now. So
It was amazing.
All right,
Yes.
all right. Listen,
Done.
we're going to set aside the close contact for a moment.
All
You
right,
have a
let's
comment?
get a room. Break up.
No.
Oh, okay.
Now, all right. So I'm going to set the table for the last bit here. We got a for and against. We got an in-house and we got out-of-house. Screw hybrid for a moment. What does hybrid really do? It actually creates more division. I think a hybrid is a terrible idea. Simply because if there's 8 of us on here, we all work at the same company and 4 decide to stay home and the other 4 decide to show up in the office, that makes it really tough for all 8 to communicate on a regular basis. I'm not saying every business is to shit or get off the pot, but it certainly has to be almost a decision for one or the other, depending on role. So I want everybody to put their thinking cap on for a sec and come up with 2 points going forward for both for and against. So back to work in the office or work from home. 2 good salient points. So managers and business owners have something to work with. Sort of thinking, hey, if you're going to be bringing everybody back to work, you need to remember that people need to perhaps have more flexible work schedules. They may come and go at less opportune times, but if their performance is still going to work well, they need to be allowed to do that. And if they're going to come in as well, you need to allow them more freedom. In other words, not looking at restrictive schedules in the form of breaks, lunch, etc. Let people do their own thing and let them settle in, or let them, instead of more homogeneity in the office place, more personalization. Your workspace should be your workspace. Go nuts, right? There's no office uniformity anymore. I'm using that as an example. So that'd be an example of, hey, if you're going to bring everyone back to the office, here's a couple of ideas you should really take forward. If you're going to let them continue to work from home, well, other than letting them work from home, how frequently are you pinging them or communicating with them? What's the training or the impetus to get people to communicate more regularly? And how are you going to communicate that expectation for results? We have the same expectation of results we did when we were in the office. It doesn't work the same way. It does not. People are looking for very different environments. Part of what happened to a number of people that went home is that the blend between their personal life and their work life, both those buckets spilled into each other quite a bit. And they found a balance by accident. So if you're going to get them to work from home, is there some way you can help them to establish a better framework between work time or et cetera? It's something we've all had to struggle with. So these are some things. So we've got hey, everybody goes back to work or everybody gets to work from home. Let's come up with 1 or 2 ideas each, spill them both out, and not a for and against. It can only be back at work or else. Well, that's pretty absolute, right? So let's give people some ideas that they can take and march forward with from there. And that's how we're going to close out our day. So in the office, 1 to 2 ideas. It's going to make a better environment. Only work from home, 1 to 2 ideas. It's only going to make it better for everybody that's there. Jot some notes, and we're going to start going around the circle.
I'll go first because I have to leave early.
Yeah.
So this is a career development problem. 80% of people hate their jobs. That's why so many people hate the hybrid model, hate the in-office model. So my simple answer to this is there's a type of person that likes hybrid. There's a type of person that likes working in the office. Match with your employer. Find an employer that agrees with your idea of hybrid or in office. That's the simple answer to your gigantic question.
Okay, thank you. Who's up next? Shan, go for it.
So for in office, I get it. You have more community. You can share your culture better and more heavily. So you have that connection, right? You have that connection, the cohesiveness among your workers. And because not a lot of people do function really highly and really well being separated from each other and still being a part of the same entity. That being said, when you're working from home, employers also have less waste because they're not paying you, like I said, to be standing around the water cooler. They're not paying you for the office drama. Because you have to be a heck of a lot more intentional of creating those situations when you have to actually reach out to somebody to start it, right? So you have happier employees. Statistically, right now, they're saying you have happier employees, you have more engaged employees when they're working from home, just on the work side, not necessarily on the community and culture side. So from that standpoint, looking at that, I'm going to say when you've got happier, more productive employees, that means you've got less turnover, less T&D. So training and development is one of the biggest costs for companies. And how much does it cost you to train and develop a new employee who's going to leave in 3 months because they're not happy with their workplace. They're not happy with you looking over their shoulder. They're not happy with whatever's going on. And you have that constant turnover. So you can reduce those by working with your employees and creating work environments, whether they be at home or whether they be in the office, that they connect with. Because it's not always about, I'm a company, I mean, even as a person, my values and standards has had to shift. So as a corporation or a company, maybe your corporate culture needs to shift a little bit and start to adjust and to accommodate the new workplace, right?
Awesome.
And right, the only other question that I would have would be around employment standards. We do have to be cognizant of the fact that these new workplace and things are not reflected in the mandates that the government has put forward. So is this leaving companies vulnerable to employees later coming back going, well, they didn't make sure I had my breaks, they did this, they did that, and taking employers to court in the end, because there's nothing in the Employment or Labor Standards Act that covers these new kind of workplaces.
Good and thoughtful. Shannon, thank you very much. Yulia, thoughts?
With hybrid work, I would say, so efficiency obviously is one thing, but let's say the time consuming, like commute, right? So that's something could also, how much of a day it takes for each person, like to go back to work and from like to work and from work. So that time can be like somehow, I don't know, either compensated or, you know, instead like people who drive and provide them, let's say people who stay in working from home and not driving, maybe reduce some of that salary in a way, like for the gas, right? Like that, let's say they're not using, and put that money towards something else. Obviously those people wouldn't like that, but that's their choice, right? They choose to work from home. So the money for that employee can be spent on something else. Let's say bring those people together once a month and do some culture like focus group so that everyone can connect. So there is some options could be, it really depends on the company, I guess, which way they would like to proceed. And if it's hybrid model, some people work from home, some in the office space can be reduced. That money also can be put towards the culture. Culture still can be built during, you know, if you have hybrid workplace. So there's no like left or right or, you know, bad or wrong. So like, I mean, so to me, I know Michigan against hybrid culture, like hybrid workplace, but to me, I think that's nowadays that we probably have to agree moving forward with that. So it's a change that it's coming and it's unavoidable. So we probably just have to change ourselves towards to accept that. So
perfect. Thanks, Yulia. Paul?
For the office would be observation, observing your staff, seeing that, you know, nonverbal, is there a situation, is there a problem, and being able to help out. Whereas if they're working from home, I can't see them at all. The other thing is quicker answers. You got something that's really quick, you can just pop into the office, hey, you know, that done, moving on. Flexibility is working at home, kids, family. So being able to juggle that side of things, right? We've all seen the Zoom or even national TV where the kid runs into the room, right? So, you know, there's a good fit for that, for working from home, and more production, less hours. Meaning through travel time and the water cooler and this and that, right? So,
okay. Justin?
I'm going to throw something out at everybody. If they want people to physically come into the office for their job and leave their house, I think employers should start paying travel time. If it's a 60-minute commute, that should be a paid commute, because otherwise I'm giving up an hour of my day each way. So an 8-hour shift turns into 10 hours. It's just my 2 cents.
You could be listening to books on tape and educating yourself on your drive.
I could also be doing laundry.
I will provide that. I will provide that Audible account for you so you can learn while you're driving.
I could also be spending that time with kids, or, getting that extra time in at the gym, or doing one of those projects that needs to be done at home. Whereas I'm stuck in a car, bitching and throwing things at people and getting stressed out because you got some moron who doesn't signal and cuts you off in traffic. So I think to pay for my frustrations, you should pay for me to be able to physically come into the office, if they're going to force it. From a benefit to working from home, again, it's less time, less gas, less frustrations, but at the end, the argument can be made for working in an office. The motivation, you feed off of your surroundings, depending on what kind of industry you're in. I come from a collections background. If it's quiet on the floor, it's quiet. You can hear a pin drop, but you get 5, 10, 15 people all on the phone talking at one point, and the floor just starts humming and everybody gets motivated. So I think there's pros and cons to both. And I think it would have to go down to, what are your actual business needs? And, for the people that are working, for the employees, what are your needs? We had this conversation this morning. I've got a friend who went from working at home to working in an office. His expenses went up $675 a month because of that transition.
Well
And his
said, Justin.
income stayed the same. So
Well said. Thank you. Don?
Well, building on that from an employer point of view, well, if I leave you at home, I'm really letting you save gas and clothes and the $600. So maybe there's no wage increase for a couple years because I just did that. Or it's a way of you offsetting all the compensation or the things for inflation that are happening right now in gasoline. So hey, if I just sit you at home, so I'm doing something for you. But going into the office, I think maybe it depends on some businesses, but where you are in the business cycle, but whether you have to flex and change right now. You may need all hands on deck to say, listen, what we used to do is not working. We used to do, or we're into hand cleaner now and sanitizers, and it's busting the doors out. Don't know how to manage it. I need all hands on deck right here to kind of manage it. Or our business just dropped off because some outside supplier just knocked us out. We got to pivot and change. So I need all hands on deck. And if you're in that growing or expanding mode, get people back in the office so you can work with them. Being at home certainly saves costs. I think people will be happier, but it also maybe forces the employer to develop KPIs. Everybody should have a KPI, key performance indicator about what are they measured on. And a lot of people don't do that, and you get a whole bunch of wasted people as far as employees. Find ways to measure them and incentivize them to get more and more, so you get more out of them because they overachieve their KPI.
Perfect. Don, thank you very much. Matt, bring it home.
Yeah, just real quick. 4 in the office, I feed off of energy. So I am better if I'm in a big room. I can elevate, but I define when I want to do that. So I have my, again, work days and I have my creative days. And those creative days are based in the office. So, and I'm grateful for it. Another one based off of in office is that, and I believe Paul mentioned this, I'm a nonverbal communicator much of the time. So I get to see, hey, wait a minute, she seems a little off. He seems, hey, he's not engaged. I can then go and say, hey, I see this. I don't have to wait for a KPI, but I think KPIs are super important. And then on the flip side, to be the at-home worker, I think the benefit there again is that, listen, careful what you wish for, because so many people are heading towards that. Great. I'm going to pay you for 4.5 hours of the day. I'm not going to give you your COLA allowance every year based off of inflation and all the other expenses. And if you want to come into the office, that's a benefit, right? Actually, you're going to pay me if you want to come into the office. Great. You want to, you need an office space? Perfect. $50 for the day or whatever it may be, right? So I think that there's going to be this really world adjustment, because it's like, what does the landscape physically look like? If we're building, every urban center is based off of their financial district, right? So the glass towers downtown, if we no longer need them, I think the at-home model is far more sustainable, because I need a place to live. I don't need a place to work, right? We don't need to build these glass towers. We only need to build one. So that to me is really important. And, there's just such a much deeper conversation, because now all of a sudden you have so many square feet downtown that could help with homeless and subsidized housing, and we don't have to build more, right? And trust me, I love building. I live in Alberta. Like, it needs to happen. We work with a ton of trades groups. But at this point, what does it mean for schooling, right? Because like really, school is just habit forming to say you need to go to a building, be involved with a group for 6 to 8 hours a day, while the at home, like the homeschooling now to me is far more appealing because that's really the direction of work. So it's just such a bigger conversation. We're
Perfect.
past 1 o'clock. I'll end there, but there's just so much more that we can take offline.
And don't forget, class warfare, for or against, right? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, and as always, the panel that came in, this is the virtual business box lunch. This is our people. They're part of my tribe. I love them for coming and sharing every Friday from noon to 1-ish, where we talk about the week that was in business. As always, Dawn, Yulia, Shannon, Justin, and Lorette had to duck out. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us. My brothers from other mothers, Matt and Paul, you're here as always. I love you guys to pieces. Next week is going to be slightly special. Why? Matt and Paul will be taking the helm. I'll be away at that point in time. They'll come in and fill your head with stuff, as always, to help you get educated. Otherwise, this is the MCC Virtual Business Box Lunch, March 25th, the end of the first quarter of the new year. What the hell? And I have been your host, Mitch Kamich. I am a savage in business, and we will see you all next time on the VBBL. Go get them, watch the previous episodes, and come back next week. See you next time.